Memory transcription subject, ONSO, Yodel Technical Specialist. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 21, 2137. After a lengthy tour aboard the UNS Rocinante under Captain Janice Monahan's directive, it was wonderful to have time to myself at home on Lern. My place of residence had once been a quaint farming city, built around the sales of a staple grain called urd. After Papa refused to adopt the industrial techniques of Federation agriculture, our crop farm had been outcompeted by those who acquiesced to the aliens' ways. Our land was lost within a few years of the exterminator's arrival, and my father toiled in construction work in his old age. It involved grueling, back-breaking tasks to build the very machinations he so despised. The farm that had been in my family for a dozen generations was gone, never to be passed down to me or my brother, Monner. It wasn't like I had any interest in agricultural professions, beyond perhaps tinkering with some automated tractors to complete the work for me. While I loved innovation, the knowledge I soaked up from the Federation wasn't worth the loss of my culture and the 2 decades as a zombie under their predator disease medications. If I could do it all over again, I would have stayed and helped Papa with the farm, forsaking my true passion. But then I would have never met Tyler. Tyler might be a dolt, but he never judges me or speaks ill of my culture. The humans have been wonderful. The village of Rinsa was once the pride and joy of this side of our small continent, with Yodel-built train tracks that allowed us to chug across the landmass in a day. The bullet trains in their place now could zip across the island in an hour. I could still picture the original railroad being blown up during a celebratory speech, as my Gojid engineering instructor goaded me on. The harbor was barely visible behind the new steel buildings, and any green space that had been present was taken up by digitized clutter. The Federation hated water sports, perhaps why Mama's boat had mysteriously caught on fire one night. As much as I missed home, there was an inescapable sadness whenever I toured the sites. New plays at the Tail Twine Theater. First time in over 20 cycles. A well-groomed yodel paced on the streets ahead of me, passing out pamphlets to passers-by. I remembered the last play I'd seen, a strange tale where the crops came alive and attacked anyone who tried to harvest them. A predatory story, if you ask the Federation. Tullio's Feud. A classic work of drama and stage choreography, about 2 warring kingdoms. Based on the grain wars. I considered grabbing a pamphlet, but I didn't want to carry it throughout my meeting with the respectable human. My desire to go to the performance was born of nostalgia and spite for the Federation, as much as anything. It wasn't as if I couldn't acquire an advertising handout on my way home. It wasn't clear why the imperialist aliens took such offense to plays, other than looking down on it as a primitive form of entertainment. Visual mediums like television and movies were just better, after all. I suppose it was a good way to suppress old texts that didn't align with their ideas. What would humans think of theater? I mused aloud, ignoring the strange looks from people I passed. They have media that's beyond realistic, run by computer graphics. Perhaps they'd think a bunch of props on a stage are stupid, though they haven't had that response to anything of ours yet. There were a handful of Terrans in sight on the streets, but I decided to restrain my curiosity. These poor primates were out enjoying a stroll, and didn't want to be interrupted by an energetic yodel peppering them with questions. I focused instead on the graffiti art on closed-down Federation buildings, which was something we'd learned from Earth. The exterminator office had been shuttered once and for all, when all alien occupiers were sent out forcibly by our military. I could see that the institution was almost ready to reopen as a recruiter's office. The Yodel technocracy, now a part of the Sapient Coalition, was to be taken seriously at long last. The arrival of the humans had given us an opportunity to throw off the Federation's yoke. Everyone who was born before first contact despised what the aliens were doing to Lern. Our planet's once gorgeous wildlife was turned to cinders by trigger-happy exterminators, burning anything that challenged their narrative. I was grateful that the Terrans were keen on conservation. That was the exact reason I'd agreed to meet up with the renowned Dr. Sarah Rosario at a repurposed lab in the village's heart. Sarah's words fell on deaf ears with the Venlil, but we're happy to accept help rebuilding the ecosystem we used to have. Fresh off the positive results she helped acquire at the summit, that should leave her riding a high. Her talents won't be wasted on learn. Were I not committed to the military's next orders, I would have loved to devote myself to aiding this project, despite it being well outside my usual purview. If I framed the environment as a machine with cohesive parts, perhaps I could assess what forces drove the greater whole and how to fix the degradation. The supposed savage predators understood more about nature than any race I'd encountered. I trusted humanity to salvage as many animals as possible. It seemed it wasn't the flesh-eaters who had utter disregard for lesser life. I ducked into the sprawling research campus, which now featured outdoor enclosures to accommodate life forms. Curiously, the Terrans had brought pets from Earth to supplement our native customs. The Yodel government had given clearance for the UN to use its discretion on what to bring. Inside, I could see more creatures that looked like dogs, with varying forms. On a stranger note, a small animal that could fit in a human's hand was yapping at a massive canine. This seemed to scare the much larger mutt. I found Dr. Rosario waiting on a couch, and without bothering with pleasantries, I pointed at the tiny, screeching thing. I know the black and brown thing is some sort of dog, like I saw in the military. What is that little thing called? The human narrowed her eyes, before chuckling with amusement. That's also a dog. I know, they look nothing alike, the breed diversity is staggering. I won't pretend we weren't involved with that. Onso, right? We met at the facility. But all Yodel look alike to you. I imagine you get the locals working here mixed up too. Don't worry, I can't tell humans with generic hair mops apart either. Hair mops? I swear I've heard Tyler call them mops, like the cleaning tool, which some of you definitely look like. Huh, well, I suppose it's better to look like a cleaning mop than an evil predator. I'd stick with calling it a hairdo or haircut, but back to your point, there's some humans that look like doppelgangers even to me. I'm glad you understand. I perked my ears to signal common ground. It was the same for me with some species that came from the Federation. You have to spend a lot of time around certain ones to pick up on their individual quirks. The way we know our dog from someone else's, even if it's the same breed. Not to say sapients are pets. Don't worry. I loved my Hensa, she was a sweet thing, a light guard. After seeing Sarah's confused reaction, I racked my brain for a human equivalent. Like angels, I think. Noble spirits that watch over Yodel. Tyler must have taught you a lot about human culture, to know that. Hardly. I researched quite a bit on my own, before I'd even signed up for the exchange program. If I was going to Earth, to help through rebuilding your cities or military service, it would be inconsiderate to not learn the basics of your culture. I didn't want to snub my nose at your customs, like the wretched Federation did to us. You're exceptional in that regard. The Yodel are quite laid back and open-minded, but few have gone the extra mile to parse our cultural references. And humans have gone to great efforts to relate to us and other life forms. I confess, I did it because I was curious, rather than any higher ideal. A man after my own heart, Onso. Now, not to cut you off, because I would love to keep talking as we walk, but should I give you a tour of our operation? Gladly. Don't worry, I understood what you said earlier about me not being allowed to take any Hensa personally. Preserving the species with care and objectivity is most important. Sarah's lips curved upward in that customary human expression, which always registered to my gaze as both a firebrand statement of defiance against Federation norms, and a graceful note of politeness imparted in a split second. It was obvious when the so-called snarl was malicious, their eyes never lied about their emotions. Those forward-facing orbs were clear as a reflection pool. I trotted after the scientist with the glee of a 5-year-old, eager to see a Hensa out of my mind's eye. It had been so long that I didn't trust my memory, especially after that farcical doctor altered my brain with his numbing pills. I attempted to return my focus to the primates, the only aliens who'd ever treated us as equals. Hundreds of civilizations were worth a pile of manure, in my book, while the humans were a priceless gift. Despite other herbivores labeling Lerna backwater, we'd received the second highest total of Terran immigrants, behind only the refugee-laden Skalga. Many were engineers working on raising our own armada from the shipyards. That was another project I wished I played a part in. The Federation had herded us away from building any warships, to avoid disrupting the notion that we were powerless, brainless primitives. Wouldn't it be the greatest insult if Yodel, in collaboration with humanity, improved upon the tech the Federation lorded over us? We already helped devise several ideas, including the crushing shield-breaking missiles. Sarah, if you'll humor me, I do have a recent question that my past research overlooked. I reminded myself that there was no shame in our societal development or low-tech endeavors. What mattered is that they were ours. If humanity were going to mock our arts and culture, they weren't the species I'd thought they were. I remember HFY said something about humans having ancient theaters. Exactly how ancient were they? Do you have any recollection of what Terran stage plays were like? The curly-haired scientist squinted with confusion. Were like? Theater is one of the oldest forms of entertainment, but you misunderstood me, I think. It's not gone. For one example, back when New York was still around, there were numerous Broadway plays, which were well regarded in many circles. Really? Sorry to sound so surprised, I just figured you'd think it's outdated, like the other aliens. The Federation are a bunch of judgmental killjoys. Don't you know that by now? Just because newer, fancier ideas exist, doesn't mean older stuff can't have its charm. I agree. I just asked because our playhouses are reopening, after being shuttered for years. It interests me what your Broadway plays were like. There were some that were dramas and such, but it was most well known for musicals. You know, actors sing songs to advance the story while doing choreographed, synchronized dances. I stifled a snort of laughter, lingering on the mental image. Which herbivore wrote those for you? Everyone knows predators aren't capable of something so sentimental and dorky. I know you're joking, but if you ask the feds, it's all part of our master plan. If how off-key Tyler sings reflects on all humans, it is part of your plan, to make sapients clutch our ears in agony. Sarah snickered for a brief moment, as we stepped into a restricted wing of the research facility. I halted in my tracks as my gaze focused on a couch, where a tan hensa with jagged black stripes was prancing atop it. The once beloved, near-extinct pet brushed up against the back of one human's head, and nipped at his earlobe. The primate was laughing, teeth visible from ear to ear. There was no question about how this Terran felt about our old friends. A few humans were down on all fours playing with yarn and laser pointers, while the more sedentary hominids allowed hensas to settle on their laps. The adoration was mutual. The small animals seemed fond of the Terrans, perhaps because of their willingness to afford attention. It used to be said that hensas were excellent judges of character. Watching an earthling scratch a rumbling pet's forward-facing ears, a predator trait that the humans curiously lacked, I wondered whether they wouldn't keep our non-sapient pals for their own people. Certainly beats breaking into our homes, and burning them alive in front of us. Fuck the Federation. For the small number of Yodel who'd been able to harbor hensas all these years, it must have been difficult to persuade them to hand their companions over to the Terrans. However, witnessing the care afforded by our arboreal allies, I believe these scientists could give us a fighting chance to bring back the most culturally significant species on Lern. It was the only way to ensure the hensas' numbers were padded, and that future generations could enjoy their company once more. Perhaps, if the pest-killing hunters flourished here again, humans might transport a few back to Earth for adoption. We love these little guys, Onso. How could even the feds hurt such cutie pies? Sarah approached the couch Terran, picking up the hensa. I pretended not to notice her voice climb in pitch, and in turn, she passed the tan animal into my shaking paws. We brought some puppies and kittens, our darlings from Earth. You could adopt a few of them in the meantime, while we're repopulating the hensas. I'm glad you invited me here to see this. You're doing good work. I pulled my paw tight around the hensa's belly, scared to drop her. Tears swelled in my eyes, as the graphic memories of my pet burning returned. Ahem. Tyler has a big dog, a Great Dane. That thing could swallow a human's hand. He left the gentle giant with his dad while he deployed, maybe for good. It's difficult for pets to be relocated, they don't understand. It's kind to force that change of scenery on them as little as possible. Yeah. If I get to retire from military service one day, I'd like to adopt a big canine like his. Nobody'd ever mess with me again. And someday, maybe I could have another hensa, preferably before I die. Learned can be our world, like it used to be. You want to make all of that a reality? I could put in a word with the UN, get them to call in a favor with your government. Could ask for you to be sent right here. You've seen as much direct action as any yodel, from what I've heard, a true hero. We owe you the chance to help with the rebirth, the renaissance of Learn. My head tilted sideways, considering her words. You would do that, Sarah? That sounds wonderful. I mean, I do want to kick the Fed guys in the teeth, but I could use a break from all that. We finished the farcel off. We exposed the info in the archives. I could be useful here now. It's your choice. You can think on it, I don't need an answer today. But I'd love the chance to work with you, and pick your brain as one science-obsessed individual to another. Just like my work with the cattle rescues is done, maybe your stint in the stars has reached its end too. Okay. Not to sound greedy, because I am grateful for the opportunity to help, but does this pay? Papa needs to retire, and I can't make that happen without a steady salary. The human pioneer took the hensa from me, and passed a note into my paws in its place. I looked up how to write in yodel numerals. I didn't misprint a thing. I nearly choked on my own saliva, as I skimmed across the 6-figure number in sloppy handwriting. Sarah couldn't be serious. The difference this could make in my family's life, not only could I serve Learn, but I could have the financial means to support all of my loved ones. It was difficult to think of a reason to redeploy, if Dr. Rosario could follow through on her promise to transfer me here. Unless there was an existential threat in the stars, this was my chance to finally be happy. Tyler, the cantankerous Sovlin, and I had earned some time on the sidelines. I was bouncing on my hind legs with excitement, before I knew it, and I darted out of the lab to avoid embarrassing myself with a celebration. My eyes must have been glowing, as I unclipped my holopad from my belt. That enthusiasm fizzled in a heartbeat, when I saw an ominous message from my human best friend, the very person I'd been wanting to contact with the good news. My heart sank into my stomach, faced with a difficult decision. Hey Onso. So looks like I have to go with the UN into Kolshan territory, sad face. Those bastards have Slanik, and if I don't save the day, Marcel's gonna do something stupid. He's supposed to leave stupid things to me, right? Anyhow, let me know if you're in or if you're out. You don't have to come. Miss ya, buckaroo. I could feel bile rising into my throat, as I was torn between loyalty to my friend and a chance at an authentic, peaceful life. Offers like the one Sarah presented to me wouldn't come around every day, it was everything I could have dreamed of. However, it had always been a no-brainer that Tyler and I stuck together. How would I feel if I forced the human to ship out without me, and something terrible happened to him? Who would watch his back if I wasn't there? The last thing I wanted was to head back to the war after enduring Kwa, Silas, and Talsk, but my friend was counting on me to accompany him to the most difficult fight yet. Even if Tyler would never say it, he was expecting me to tag along, I'd been adamant over joining him on his perilous rescue mission of Marcel on Scillis. Had it not been an exercise in futility, perhaps I would have mentioned to my buddy that he kept putting himself in harm's way for Mr. Fraser and Slanek. That was just who Tyler was, someone who helped out his brothers. That was why I knew, if the roles were reversed, he would have agreed to join me in a heartbeat. No incentives or comfort could have swayed his decision. It was also the reason I accepted that I had to turn down the offer of a lifetime, and follow my human buddy to Alpha. A serene existence on Lern, with a monster-sized dog curled up on my bed, would have to wait until after we delivered some justice to the heart of the Federation. Memory transcription subject, Onso, Yodel Technical Specialist. Date, Standardized Human Time, March 3, 2137. The march toward Kolshan territory couldn't happen in a single step, rather, it was a monumental push throughout the galaxy. The Terrans stopping by Lern to integrate a handful of Yodel-built ships into their formation proved convenient. I didn't need to ferry myself to Earth when the UN were docking above my world. Even if they would never give voice to these sentiments, I knew humans thought most herbivores were liabilities in combat. However, they showed no such reservations about having vessels crewed by our fiery sailors. The minutiae of Yodel bureaucracy were also unique in our relations with Earth. No other species would have dared to host an exchange program on human soil, but millions of our kind were already there for the rebuilding efforts. The first meeting took place in a city called Brussels, the heart of some amalgamate faction known as the European Union. Tyler, for a man as lacking in foresight as he was, attempted a delicate tap dance around prey sensibilities at first. Perhaps the UN's program had suggested such restrictions for the human side, but I suspected my pal drew those conclusions from interacting with Venlo. Regardless, hosting the meetup on Terran ground meant that, despite my gushing about the smallest details of our home, Tyler had never actually seen or set foot on Lern. I was bouncing with excitement for the tour I had planned. The sole upside of shipping out in this manner was getting to nerd out about my hometown. Finally, an alien who cared about us, or pretended to care. The big guy certainly cared about me, but I knew he'd find my grocery list of fun facts boring. Alright, Onso. Look alive, they're almost here. I perked my ears up as the shuttle docked in the spaceport, and waved once I spotted the massive human among a crowd of sailors docking for a few hours of shore leave. Tyler. Over here. The blonde hominid strolled over with a goofy grin. How's it going, buddy? Up top. I obliged the Terran's odd tradition of smacking his raised hand, and wagged my tail. I'm glad to finally get to show you around Lern. I know we only have a few hours, so that means we've got to hurry. I'd pace yourself, Onso, you're dealing with a persistence predator. A persistence predator whose diet has been entirely ramen and mac and cheese. Those carbs are gonna keep you persistently on your ass. So you did read my texts. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to a blurry, crooked picture of a half-eaten cup of ramen with a plastic fork in it, and a few noodles hanging over the side. It's called keeping in touch. Not all of us can be all E equals MC squared. Pfft, you don't even know what those letters mean. Ouch. Alright, you win the ribbing contest. As a reward, I guess I'll let you play the new video games I brought. This time, I picked ones with turn-based combat. If you smash another controller, I'm gonna make you sit and watch me play. You can't make me do anything, Tyler, but, I'm sorry about the controllers. It's okay, not your money you're pissing down the drain, eh? Easy come, easy go. Quit ragging on me. I don't have great control of my temper, but you know I haven't been able to even feel angry at all for the past 20 years. My neurochemistry is fucked forever. When I'd first come off the mind-numbing drugs, it was right after the Yodel technocracy voted to join the Terrans, following Noah's speech on Alpha. The daily screening stopped at my engineering job in a flash, once the Federation was driven off-world in the Great Reclaiming. Having a name like the Great Reclaiming already was a clear sign about how not great we thought the alien occupiers were. The Farsal had instituted a puppet government, but when given an out, Yodel weren't compliant with their maddening decrees. Anyone who maintained loyalty to the Alien League was ousted, and we sought to make ourselves respectable. After all the horrible things the Federation said about sapient predators, it was obvious it differed from reality. Ambassador Lalo's reports of how the humans stood up for us, primitives, made it clear they were the only ones who saw the injustice of it all. Siding with them gave us a fresh start. The current government had settled on the technocracy name in opposition to the primitive jabs that plagued us in the 22 years since our uplift. These new officials were unelected, something Tyler had been surprised I was okay with. It would be a rude awakening to him that people claiming power to overthrow the Federation tyrants were wildly popular. We'd been denigrated for years, and we'd rather have an imperfect government of our own species than one of imperialists. The main focus was centralizing authority across Lern, rather than clinging to the loose, local overseers that the aliens had used to keep us divided. I was just giving you shit, buddy. I didn't mean to strike a nerve. Tyler's expression had become concerned. You should know this already, but I care about you way more than any controller. Handling emotions is hard as fuck, even for those of us who've had decades of practice. If it makes you feel any better, grown-ass humans get mad about stupider shit than that. I still remember how my bats-hit crazy old man would scream at the poor umpire in my Little League games. I have no idea what you're talking about, I responded. The gist of it is, adults get pissed because their kids lose games, when they're playing for fun. It doesn't matter. My dad's a nutter, always has been. I'd rather you smash 1,000,000 controllers than do something that extra. Your stories never seem to translate, but I appreciate you trying. Why don't we get to touring Lern? Let's go, Onso, living geyser of fun facts. I like information, and I like sharing it unprovoked. There's worse things out there. Besides, if we're going to be shipping off to the hardest battle of our time together, this is the one upside. The one upside? What about hanging with your best friend, Tyler? I'm kinda indifferent to that part of the trip. Fuck you. Bah, lead the way. The blonde human's head was on a swivel as we exited the spaceport, soaking in the digital adverts that remained. I could remember, before the Federation's arrival, Rinsa's current hub of spacecraft had been home to scribes. The printing press rendered the profession of transcribing or copying documents by hand obsolete. It had been the perfect complex to add to the demolition list, and replace with something modern. The location set it a block away from the bullet trains that were built atop the ruins of our railroads. More interestingly to Tyler, some Yodel had dabbled in various Terran cultural imports, by choice. Tail dyeing was in with the younger crowd. I could see one teen with a bright blue tail, which clashed with his reddish fur, pass by us. Others took a fancy to adorning themselves with shiny objects, and were wearing trinkets around their forearms or necks. That jewelry trend caught on with numerous generations, since hand laborers often bound straps around their wrists in the old days. Transforming a symbol of the working class into a classy icon had mass appeal. I didn't know aliens dyed their fur, Tyler remarked. I swished my tail lazily. We did, but not weird colors, until we met you crazy primates. Some Yodel used powdered leaves to conceal gray fur, but not on this continent. Age is considered a sign of wisdom here in Rinsa. Pfft, getting long in the tooth doesn't mean you're wise. It's about the total sum of your life lessons, and some people don't learn lessons no matter how long they're taught. Source: my dad exists. You don't like your dad, and you left your dog with him? Well, it's better than a shelter. There's all sorts of abandoned animals running around on the outskirts of ruined cities. It's sad, wouldn't do that to OL Zeus. Your dog's name. I've done some research into human mythology to understand that nomenclature. We had a pantheon of gods ourselves, you know. There were a handful of followers, up until the Feddies decided it was too primitive to salvage. The old customs were most popular outside the island. One deity was like Zeus, but I don't understand why thunder was the king in many human circuits. Because it's loud and it burns shit, and that's cool. I'm pretty sure some mythos had sun gods and all, and there's lots of top dog creation and death gods too. I dunno. Who led your pantheon? Ralki, the god of fire. He was considered the most powerful god, able to melt or destroy anyone who challenged him. Giver of warmth, who lit the very sun. So Ralki is a sun god of sorts. Your people got that flames in the sky shit pretty right. The sun kinda is a big fireball. We don't consider him a god of the sun, not alone, anyways. Ralki's priests were adamant about the signs he'd send. Our lunar satellite isn't the right proportions and distance to have total eclipses like on Earth, but when the sun had a shadow over it, Ralki was threatening to take it away. Forests catch on fire, judgment. A building goes up in flames, Ralki cursed its owner. So what do you think Ralki thinks about human fire eaters? Ralki doesn't think anything, because he's not fucking real. As for what I think you shouldn't put fire in your mouth. Divine or not, respect nature a little. We do. It's better than the other aliens, who used fire to, shit. I shouldn't have brought that up. To burn animals alive? It's alright. If Ralki were real, he'd give those exterminator pricks a taste of their own medicine. Tyler stopped in his tracks, narrowing his eyes. Also, after what happened the past month, I just feel obligated to restate that, if you were ever having thoughts about doing something like that, I hope you'd talk to me. Maybe I say all the wrong things, but there's nothing I wouldn't try to help with. I'd be fucking rabid if someone torched Zeus, so I'm not gonna give you some pacifist bullshit. Just, don't get obsessed with revenge, and don't not reach out. Tyler, I've always talked about hating the feds. But I can assure you, while I struggle with my temper, I'm not going to lose it for good like Slanek. I'm going to kill those bastards in a disciplined way, by highlighting their shit-ass ships on the sensor's screen. That's what we're doing, bringing them down. Hell yeah. We're bringing them down the right way too, because we're better than them. I'd say us humans are soft, but that's not really true. It's more that once we open that can of worms, doing evil shit, it doesn't get closed. So we don't cross those lines. If you ever feel any way about that, you can tell me, I might even fucking agree with you. That clear? Well, I do think that you're soft, but I can also see how you're better than those immoral, colonizing pricks. I have no problem following human orders, for that reason. Even if I don't understand, I trust you. My bluster is just a way of coping with everything they did, and you know that. I do. But I'd rather not assume and check, than have anything happen to you. I'd be all shades of torn up if I lost you, Onso. You're my much smarter bro. The blonde human gave me a hearty slap on the back, and I tried to shake off the slight stinging sensation from that affectionately intentioned gesture. It was fresh in my mind how Slanek had declared that he had predator disease, and outright stated that he was aggressive and unstable. My short fuse was something I recognized as a problem, but I was nothing like that Venlil. It was good to know Tyler would check on me, and that I could talk to him about anything. When I'd confessed all of the buried baggage about my Hensa after Silas, prompted by the sight of Dino, my exchange partner had been sympathetic and supportive. Tyler may not seem like it from the outside, but he's such a soft guy. He's been helpful in letting me express and address my feelings for the first time since the Federation arrived. No predator or prey behavior shtick, just acceptance. I jogged down the sidewalk, not wanting to remain sidetracked. I just build rockets, Tyler. Anyone can do that. Don't rub it in now. Save that remark for Sovlin, Tyler pouted. Speaking of that racist old Gojid, you'll never believe this, but you know that Arxer I was guarding? Sovlan started lobbying for the UN to let Vizith enlist like she wanted to. I'm not that gullible. It's true. Obviously, we can't have Vizith on a ship with other herbivore crew, even if it wouldn't piss off the Dominion. Sovlan's on latrine duty for the entire trip over, so be sure to rub it in his face. Aliens gotta learn to respect orders, you don't get a damn pass every other day. Don't go lumping me in with the witless feds. All aliens aren't like that. I've never disobeyed an order. Now, this is my one chance to show you around Rinsa, and I plan to regurgitate everything I know. Wouldn't have it any other way. The unlucky Terran was subjected to verbose speeches on every landmark. With him present, my sadness over the cultural losses was a blip on my mental radar. I pointed out Tail Twine Theatre, which had a bustling ticket booth. Crowds had poured out in droves to see the classic play, which had been running for over a week now. The entire entertainment district could be refurbished off of the proceeds, with a fair being hosted next month. Yodel acrobats were returning, not having performed since the Federation swore off their stunts as senseless, primitive derangement. Tyler was also shown to an unassuming tower of dirt down the road, an auspice field. Yodel would toss a spare seed into the tilled soil, based on an old superstition that it would bring good harvests and fortune. The human didn't mock the practice as unscientific, instead, he wagged a finger at it like he recognized it. Surprisingly, despite their scientific advancement, many Terrans believed in luck. I learned they had similar concepts, namely wishing wells and fountains that they threw coins into. I marveled yet again that a capable, advanced species of extraterrestrials could hold on to past practices. We got stuff we think's bad luck, Tyler added. Walking under ladders, breaking mirrors, opening umbrellas inside. Sometimes it's as random as the number 13 or seeing a black cat. No rhyme or reason. You guys got anything like that? I noticed that I was passing the old, now shuttered, predator disease facility, where that awful Farsal doctor had treated me. Though I knew this had once been a cutting-edge factory, I would rather talk about luck than this accursed building. It's bad luck to get rainwater in your ears. Something about stealing it from the plants? It's also bad luck to look at a sundial without light shining on it. So not at night or in a storm. Yeah. Some people are superstitious enough to cover sundials up in the evening, or when they see clouds on the horizon. I don't really believe in such things, but there's no reason to tempt fate. Just in case. Same. It's easy enough to not limbo my way under a ladder. I glanced back over my shoulder, in the other direction from Tail Twine Theatre. The research campus, where Sarah Rosario had invited me to join her Hensa preservation team, was that way. Tyler would be elated to meet a Hensa and learn about the project, but I didn't want to explain what I'd forsaken to re-up with his squad. The last thing I sought was for my friend to feel guilty over a choice I made of my own volition. That pathing also was the direction of my father's current worksite, where his crew were building a gun range, but I suspected he'd be ashamed for me to introduce him to a human there. You know where the Federation wouldn't want us to go? The harbor. Tyler used to go fishing with his father, and I used to sail. I know we both like water. I turned left, zipping toward the harbor. Here's where we end the tour, Tyler. If Mama's boat hadn't gone up in smoke, I'd take you for a ride. The blonde human stepped onto the dock, and I noticed that several of his kind were present in the marina. Few recreational boats were left, with the rows of moored vessels mostly bringing cargo from outside the islands. The Federation, contradictory to their goals of preventing deep-sea exploration, seemed to have gone after anything that looked primitive. I guess their priorities got tangled up. Tyler patrolled the length of the boardwalk, and given his enthrallment, I decided my commentary wasn't necessary. The Earthling wandered away from the boats, finding a small sandy strip to admire the vista. A relaxed smile spread across his face, and he removed his shoes and socks. He wiggled his toes in the dull green sand, before wandering closer to the water. I tailed behind him, ignoring the irritating feel of grits in my fur. How could anyone see how drawn humans were to nature, and think that it was derivative of some hunting instinct? No other species appreciated beauty quite as much as the predators. Tyler turned his head to look at me. This is wonderful. I'll tell you what, Onso. We make it back from Kolshan space, and I'll find someone to teach you how to surf. I need to see a Yodel hang 10. Something to look forward to on our return? You got a deal, I chuckled. The human flashed his teeth, mirth glowing in his blue eyes. With the hours ticking down before our time to ship out, we sat and enjoyed the sound of crashing waves against Lern's shoreline. Together, the two of us could find a way to pull through against any foe.